Welcome everyone. Okay, let's get started. So thanks for joining us today for Giraffe 101. I'm Holly Conrad Smith. I lead customer success at Giraffe. I have a background in architectural technology, especially for residential multifamily development. I'm an urbanist. I love talking about smart growth, equitable development, zoning reform. So feel free to send me a message on our Slack channel, The Tower, and I would love to chat with you about any of those interests. I'm also very excited to give an overview of Giraffe's features today. So this session is meant to be very interactive. Feel free to unmute and ask a question at any time. The group size is kept small intentionally so you can feel comfortable asking any questions. If you don't want to unmute, you can also ask a question in the meeting chat, and I will try to keep on top of those as much as possible. The demo here should take about 30 minutes, and there will also be time for open questions at the end. So with all of that housekeeping out of the way, let's get started. So first off, what even is Giraffe? Well, at its most simple, Giraffe is a map of the entire globe, but it is a canvas that you can draw on. So everything that you ever create in Giraffe is going to be geolocated and to scale, just because by virtue of Giraffe itself, everything is always in place and always to scale. As you draw and create, Giraffe works alongside you. It calculates areas, ratios, helps you lay out car parking, helps you analyze solar. You can use it to manage data. It's got a lot of different use cases: public engagement, density studies, zoning analysis, carbon tracking. But today we are going to look at Giraffe's most widely used and most base use case, which is a feasibility study. And we'll be doing a feasibility study for a residential mixed-use development. Any of the skills you learn today, though, will be useful for any type of Giraffe project. And with that, I will first give an overview of just the Giraffe user interface. So the first time you log into Giraffe, you're going to see just about all of the tools that you have available in Giraffe shown to you. But what are they? It can be overwhelming to learn any new tool, so I always like to start with just giving an overview of the user interface. First up, we have the top bar here, and the top bar has some tools that allow you to do some really high level things. So first off, you have your workspace switcher here. If you are in multiple workspaces, which most of you are because you'll have a personal workspace plus your company workspace, you can click here to switch which workspace you're currently working in. It's good to keep all of your projects that are company-based in your company workspace so that it's easy to share with everyone. So just make sure you're in the right place when you start working. Next to that, you have your project selection. So I can click here, and these are all of the projects I have available to me in this workspace. These are items that either I've created or they've been shared with me. And then if I want to see all of my projects across any workspace, I can click on show all of my projects. That's really helpful for folks who maybe work with consultants a lot, and your consultants might have their own workspace, so you can see an overview of every project you have access to that way. Right next to that is our new project button. We are right now outside of a project. You'll see we're in, if you see the URL here, it says Scratchpad. The Scratchpad is a place where you can just sort of sketch in Giraffe, but it won't be saved anywhere. So to save something, we'll need to define a project boundary and then save that project, which we'll do in a second. But if you ever want to clear your map and start over, you can just click new project here, and that'll bring up your new project controls. And then right next to that is, because we're in Scratchpad, we have this big orange button asking us to draw a boundary to save the project, which we'll do after we get through the user interface. On the left-hand side of the top bar, you have your project navigator. So you can view your projects in a few different ways. As your map view, where we are now, you can view them in a Kanban, which is a project management view where each of your projects is displayed as a card, and you can move those cards between different statuses or owners or however you would like to manage. And then you can also view all of your projects in a list in the table view. And then all the way to the far left is your menu. And the menu is where you can do some things like export your project to a variety of formats. We have some advanced options here for those of you who really want to get into the guts. You can also add layers from here or view your project settings. I'm not inside of a project, so I can't open project settings here. And then if you are a workspace administrator, you can go into the admin section and invite more users to your workspace, allocate licenses, define workspace properties, etc. That's outside the scope of our 101 today, but that is where that is located. The right-hand side here is all of your apps. So Giraffe has some basic functionality, which is really drawing and geospatial information, just viewing it on your map canvas. But if you want to extend that knowledge in any way, you can use one of our apps. By default, every project comes with the Urban app, Analytics app, and Solar app. We'll go into more detail about what each of these things do later in the presentation, but that's where they're located. Right above that as well is usages, and this is where you will define your urban building typologies. We will also take a look at usages in detail in a little bit. And then right below that, you can add additional apps. So there's some openly available apps, such as the Speckle connector, which is new as of this past weekend. So you can send your project data automatically to almost any architecture tool you can imagine. There's also the opportunity that your workspace may have purchased additional functionality through the Giraffe Marketplace. So you might have access to regrid parcel data, to local logic demographics, to the footprint company's carbon database. So all of those things would be available in your apps to add to your project. And then moving over to the left-hand side of your interface here, you have all of your data layers. So this flyout here is all about data. We've got layers and properties, and we'll look at properties in detail in just a second. Layers is how you add additional geospatial information to your project, whether that be connected from an outside data source like an Esri layer or uploading a shapefile, or by you adding geospatial information to your project by drawing on the map canvas. So you can use both drawing layers and data layers in combination. Again, we'll look at more layers later. I'm going to bring in some data and show you how to do that as well. Lastly, at the bottom here, you have all of your drawing and map tools. So on the right hand, or on the left hand side here, sorry, you've got your 2D and 3D toggle, so I can toggle between a top view and a 3D perspective view at any time. And you can also search on your map. So I'm going to just fly to Los Angeles today, and all I'm doing is typing in that city name here. Just like in Google Maps, you can type in a city, you can type in a point of interest, you can type in an exact address if you have that, and it'll pop up as options here that you can fly to. I'm just going to click on Los Angeles, fly in here a little bit, and maybe zoom a little bit more to downtown here. I'll zoom in a little bit further to demonstrate my drawing tools here. we'll find this little site here that looks a little bit empty. And then right next to this on the right-hand side, we have all of our actual drawing tools. So you can draw buildings, trees and landscape, roads, paths, and parking, annotations. We actually had a really great annotation update as well over the weekend. And then we also have some generative design algorithms built in, so you can do things like create apartment blocks, generate rows of trees, boulevards, etc. We'll look at all of those more in a little bit. At the furthest right here, we have our general drawing tools, and that's actually where I'm going to start today. So I'm just going to click on the three dots, and then I have all of these tools available to me. The first tool that I want to use today is just our rectangle tool. And you'll see at the side of some of these tools, we have some hotkeys. So if I wanted to just draw a rectangle from the map without clicking in here and then clicking on rectangle, I could just click R on my keyboard and immediately I would be able to draw a rectangle. So here I'll just draw a rectangle. As I'm drawing this, I can define the exact size of this rectangle by typing a number on my keyboard. So right now I'm saying it's 90 feet by 130 feet. We'll just give it a second to create that. And now what I've got is literally just a rectangle on my map. This rectangle has a few attributes. Those attributes are its length, its width, its area, and the color of this rectangle is a kind of medium gray. But otherwise, Giraffe doesn't know anything about this except that this rectangle exists in space. It's at the, intersection of East 6th and Gladys Avenue, and, it's an 11,700 square feet. But besides that, we haven't told Giraffe anything about this shape. We can tell Giraffe more information about this shape by adding properties. And properties in Giraffe are attributes or parameters or really just additional information about that shape that we want to tell Giraffe how to treat it. So if I add a property, for instance, like height, I can then tell Giraffe that this shape should be 30 feet tall. I can also add properties like color, and I can tell Giraffe, instead of gray, I actually want you to make the shape red. You can add all kinds of properties to these shapes. You can add things like a building ID, the number of levels, floor to floor, efficiency factors, dwelling counts, and so on and so on. And you can imagine how these properties would help you to build urban typologies. Like a residential building would probably have information like, what is its dwelling unit count? What is its efficiency factor? How do I know what is the gross building area versus the saleable area? And all of those things are controlled by properties. However, as you can imagine, adding each of these properties individually to a shape one at a time would be incredibly tedious and not very efficient. So what we've actually done is create a way for you to make a database of different building typologies using those properties, allowing you to apply that typology to a shape in one click. So I'm going to tell Giraffe now, actually, that I want this shape to be residential. And I'm just selecting a usage here from the dropdown. And it's going to define that shape as residential. Excuse me. Now, all this shape is that same rectangle, but it's had a group of properties applied to it that tell Giraffe what to think about that shape. And because of those properties, we actually now get this amazing readout in the urban tab. And that includes things like the building coverage area. We get an open space ratio. We get the height of that building, which is 105 feet. we can see things like, oh, we need to provide 111 parking spaces because of the occupancy of this building. And we can see that the building is estimated to have 113 dwelling units in it. And all of that came from properties that are on the residential usage. Now, before I jump into usages, I want to pause for a second and ask if anyone has any questions about what we've looked at so far. And feel free to unmute or drop those questions in the meeting chat. I'll give it a couple seconds. Is it possible to use metric instead of imperial? Yes, it is. Sorry, I have a spam call coming through. Yes, in most of the world, Giraffe will default to metric, and it's not an awkward EU question at all because Giraffe is actually developed in Australia. So the majority of the world, of course, uses metric. I am an American, so I am used to imperial, which is why I like to demo in imperial. But yes, you can use metric, and it will default that way depending on where you are physically located in the world. Great question. Yep, and Mike's just asking, how do you adjust some of the factors applied? That is right where we're going next, so perfect segue. Thanks for that, Mike. So I'm going to show you now how Giraffe came to these conclusions that are showed in the Urban tab. So remember that usages editor that I mentioned before? That's where we're going to set up all of these assumptions. So if I open up usages, you'll see here something that looks pretty similar to what we looked at over in the properties tab when we just had that rectangle pulled up and we were applying properties to it. Except now these are all defined as being contributing to the residential usage. And that means that anytime I tell Giraffe that this rectangle or this shape should be considered residential, it's going to bulk apply all of these assumptions to that shape. So this is where we get things like the building's efficiency, which takes us to gross floor area, the cell efficiency, which takes us to net saleable. All of this is user defined. So we have, some generic assumptions that are put in as our template, but you can then adjust these as you want, create your own template, and then start every project with all of your assumptions already pre-built into Giraffe. And we highly recommend you do that. If you need some help building out a template, I am happy to help you as well. If I scroll down here a little bit, you can also see my unit sizes and unit mix. So maybe I actually want to assume that these units are slightly different size than what's already been defined. And I can just come in here and adjust these square footages. I can also adjust the price. All of these prices are pretty low, but I'll just leave them for now. And you can also adjust the assumed number of parking spaces to provide for each unit. And this is how you get to that parking calculation that was shown in the Urban tab. So what you would do is look at your local building code, or if there's any overlays or anything like that, determine how many parking spaces would be required per unit and just input that here. And what you can actually do is go above and beyond that way. Like maybe you have a personal internal goal because you're building a luxury development. I actually want to provide 2 parking spaces per unit, even though that's not what the requirement is. Or maybe you know that you're going to go in for a zoning variance and you want to provide fewer parking spaces per unit. That's also an option. So lots of great options there. I'm going to leave all of these as just 1 parking space per dwelling for this sample. And then I can start adjusting my unit mix by just easily grabbing these sliders, adjusting the mix. Maybe I want this building to have mostly studios and then kind of an even split of 1 and 2s and then just a few 3s. Lastly, I can also adjust some assumptions about just appearance. Like maybe I actually want residential to be purple instead of yellow, and I can just pick whatever colors I wish. Now, when I save these changes, you can see as soon as it was saved, all of those assumptions are applied to my shape. And now when I close out of here, we're actually going to see a different unit count here and different percentages. And because I adjusted my parking requirements to be 1 per unit, you can see that my parking requirements now match exactly the number of units that are in the building. Any questions about usages in general? Nope, seems pretty clear. Okay, now what I'm going to do is kind of start from scratch and show you how to bring in some data from the Los Angeles municipal GIS systems. And we're going to create a real site and sort of design something from scratch. So I'm just going to click New Project here. And I'm going to apply my blank template. And blank template will just set me back to the giraffe defaults. Vicente is asking how to switch to industrial instead of residential. You would, in the usage editor, if you want to edit industrial, you would just come to this drop down and pull up your industrial usage. If you have drawn something that's residential and you actually meant to draw something that's industrial, you would just change the usage here. And industrial would only have 1 level generally, so then I can bring that down. Perfect. So let me start from scratch here. And I'm just going to zoom out a little bit so we can see some more information in my data here. And now I'm going to start searching for geospatial layers to bring into my project. To do that, I'm just going to click on data layer here in my left-hand palette. And what pops up here is a list of all of the layers that are available to you. Those layers might be items that are public in the Giraffe database. They might be items that someone in your workspace uploaded and shared with you. And they also might be layers that you personally uploaded. And that just shows everything in this list. And it shows you items that are pertinent to your current geospatial location by default. So right now it's showing me layers that make sense based on my location in Los Angeles. Some other layers that might be really useful in a lot of cases are flood data. So I'm just going to search flood, bring up our US national flood data. Maybe contours might be useful. And in the US, I really like using the Elevation Contours USA 3 depth. That's from the USGS. It's a 3-foot contour layer. And then often wetlands coverage is very important to know too. Some of these layers might not show anything where we are currently in the middle of the city of Los Angeles, but we'll see what we come up with. And then the last layer that I also want to add is just parcels. And I know that there is a Los Angeles parcels layer that I have added to the Giraffe database as well. So now that I've clicked those check marks next to all of those layers that I want to add, I'll just exit out of that window. And we'll just give it a moment to load up all of this information that I've added. Once I have the information in my layers palette, I can change which order they're displayed in by just clicking and dragging on a layer. I can also put the layers into a group by dragging a layer on top of another one and giving that group a name. So I'm just going to create a group for terrain that has like my flood and my contours and my wetlands in it. And I can adjust the visibility of a layer by dragging the slider to make it more or less opaque. Or if it's in a group, I can toggle everything off all at once by just clicking that toggle. The order that the layers display in here is the order that they will render in on the map. So if you see the satellite layer here, if I turn that on, it's going to turn on top of everything else. So you can't see any of my other information. But if I drag it to the bottom here underneath terrain, not into terrain, underneath terrain, at least now, okay, so it's underneath the parcel layer. So now I can see at the same time the satellite and the parcel layers, which might be useful to you. So just remember that you can change the order of these layers by just dragging them to another location. I'm going to make the satellite a little bit more transparent so it's not so dark. And now we can start doing a little bit of searching. So if you wanted to do some site prospecting, something that might be useful is to use our lens. I did a Feature Friday on Lens recently where I took a really deep dive into how to use every functionality in Lens. So I'm not going to do a big demonstration during Giraffe 101, but if you want to watch that, definitely go to our YouTube channel and pull up the Lens Feature Friday. What I'm going to do is just pull up my shape area, and I want to find something that's greater than, maybe 3,000 square feet. All of these are probably greater than 3,000 square feet. There we go. No, we aren't. So you'll see the map will start to drop out any parcels that don't meet that requirement that I just put in there. I can also style these by, for instance, if I want to style them by, on this data set, I have my use description. So I can kind of see what the zoning might be allowable on that site. And just save that. And, I kind of like the look of this blue one that's over here. There's a lot of stuff on there, but maybe it's all it's good to be replaced. I'm not sure. Please don't judge me if there's some amazing architecture here and I am not familiar. So what I'm going to do now is just use this site to define my project boundary. And to do that, I'm going to click draw boundary to save project. And what I could do is just click at the corners here and kind of manually define my project outline. But what I prefer to do, since I have these parcels as a data layer, is to right click on the map. And I can just set my project boundary based on that parcel shape that's in that data layer. This whole area looks like it's actually multiple parcels. So I'll just give that a second to set. I could go around here and merge and add all of these parcels together, which looks like might be worth doing. So I'll do that. Just merge that in here. And then I'm just going to save the project. Click Save Project As, and I can give this any name that I want. And you'll also notice that there's some additional information here that could be filled out. The information that's here is defined by your workspace administrator. So it can be literally any information that might be important to you and your organization. A lot of times there might be a drop down for the project status. There might be an input for the project value. There might be an input for who is the lead developer on this project. So you can input, you can create any properties that might be important to you and have those set up so that anytime someone in your workspace creates a new project, you can store that information on the project. I'll just save the project. Jump here into the share project area, I can share my project with anyone who has an email address and just send that project to them. If they have a Giraffe license, they'll be able to open it up and look at it. Or if they have a free Giraffe license, they'll have access to view up to 3 projects and edit up to 1 project that you share with them. You can also create teams in your workspace and share with a team. So that might be an architectural studio, it might be a market area, it might just be a team that's working with a specific client. So you can define those teams however you wish, but it's an easy way to share a project with multiple people at one time. And then there's also the option to share the project with your entire workspace if you want everyone in your org to have access all at once. I'll just click go to project. And now I have a new project created. The outline matches exactly these parcel outlines that I defined. And it also brought in all of the geospatial data that I was analyzing outside the project before. If I had drawn anything before on that map view, it would also bring in that geometry. So sometimes you might be playing around in Scratchpad and you decide, okay, actually I want to save this. You can feel comfortable creating a project and it will save everything that you have currently visible on the map into that project. So I'm going to just turn off my parcel outline now because I don't really need that. And I am going to adjust my 3D buildings layer so that it doesn't include the buildings inside of this parcel outline. However, before I do that, I actually think I want to keep this building that's on the corner. I don't want to demolish that building. So what I can do is right click on that building. If you remember right clicking just before this to create your parcel outline, I can do the same thing with almost any data that is included on my project map. So I just created an outline that matches that building. And now what I can do is apply usage to that. So this building's going to stay. I'm going to convert it into commercial. And now I have the readouts of the gross floor area. You know, I'm starting to calculate my FAR, and I even have the height and how many parking spaces might be required based on this commercial building that I just created. Now that I've created that building, let me just remove all of my 3D buildings. And again, this is a lens function. And I'm going to filter my 3D buildings by geometry. And that geometry is just me coming in here and saying anything inside of this outline, remove from my 3D buildings layer. I'm also going to, I'm going to color these by, make them white. Perfect. So now I'm ready to get started actually doing a development here. Before I go any further, does anyone have any questions about creating a project using geospatial data, etc., what we just went through?
Hi, Holly. It's Steve. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Steve?
I'm all right. Did you just say something about saving and when it saves and that kind of thing? Like if you're just, that was one of my questions on Notion, I think it's called, about, if I'm just messing around in my project and I don't want to save it, because I'm just doing some analysis or something like that.
Yeah, so Giraffe is going to auto save anything that's inside of a project. My recommendation is if you're working inside of a project and you don't want your changes to save, maybe create another drawing layer that you can then just delete out after you're done. Okay. But it is going to auto save everything if you're inside a project. If you're in Scratchpad, it won't save anything that you do.
What is Scratchpad exactly then? How do I
when you first open up Giraffe,
oh, I see.
Yeah, your URL will say /Scratchpad.
Right.
So that's
before I start the project.
Correct. Yep, it's before you save.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Perfect. Okay, so now what I'm gonna do is just I'm gonna really quick throw some buildings down on the map here. I'm gonna do some that are kind of mixed use, so I'll just add a couple of retails here. I'm going to throw some residential on top of these guys. I'm using S on my keyboard, S for snap. So that I can snap to those corners. There we go. Oops, did not snap very well there. And then maybe this one I only want it to be a little bit shorter. And maybe on this side, we're gonna look at more of like a commercial office kind of park. So maybe I'll just throw down some more commercial here. And maybe this one I want to be taller. So it is, you can see, really fast and really playful to start throwing down some options onto your map. I can even decide things like, actually, I want this shape to be an L instead of just a rectangle. And it's really easy to adjust on the fly as I'm going. If I don't need it to be exact, I can just push and pull. You can do multiple usages per floor by simply drawing multiple usages next to each other. So I just threw down a community, or nope, put the wrong usage on it. I'll do community, select the correct one, make it one level. And then I can put a retail next to that. Just snap to the edges, pull out, make this also one level. And then I can build some resi on top of that. Really easy. And now I have a whole building that is actually 3 different usages all mixed together. The last sort of drawing thing that I want to show you is how to create parking. So I've got here now, based on what I've drawn on the map, I need over 1,000 parking spaces. So let's see what we can do to build those parking spaces. I'm going to try to do some surface parking. It's like the worst way to use this land, but let's just do it anyway so it's easy to see. So I'm going to draw kind of a rectangle per building here and see what we come up with. You can see that the parking will start to count as soon as I've started drawing any parking shapes. So it, just like your residential, is very modular and very easy to throw some information down on the map. Gonna add some more on grade here, great big one. Awesome. So I'm nowhere near as parked as I need to be, but you can start to see how quick it is to put down some information and compare it against a metric that you've already defined. I do want to show that it is possible to also visibly see the parking spaces. So what you're seeing now, this count, is based on a metric that's inside the car park usage, which has been applied to each of these shapes, that says it has 2.65 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. Now, if I want to get more specific with this, I can actually add those parking spaces. And that is in our flow builder, which is how you do generative design in Giraffe. And the flow builder just takes any shape that you draw and makes it a little bit more complex, adds some information to it. So I'm going to add parking bays to this here. And I'm going to come in here and make my parking bays more American sized, just to make sure that what we see is what we get. And now I can actually visibly see these parking spaces and start to decide whether or not this layout is actually any good. As I adjust the shape, it'll adjust the parking spaces to fill that new shape that I've drawn. And you can just keep going on and on there. There's also opportunity here for maybe some open space. So I'm going to throw down some green space here. Maybe I want to actually put some trees in between my commercial area and my residential area. So I'll just grab my park with trees option. Put like a little strip down here down the middle, and that will generate some trees. And as I'm doing this, you're seeing things like how much open space per person there might be, my car parks per person, my paved area versus my landscaped area. So you're getting all of these really important metrics just live as you draw. You also might want to do some more detailed calculations here, and that's where analytics comes in. Now, the Giraffe 101 is not long enough to do a full analytics deep dive, but what I can show you is we have a nice template that you can bring in that will give you like a for rent kind of feasibility analysis of your project. So if I pull up my for rent feasibility, I can start to see things like my NOI, my stabilized return on cost, a breakdown of construction costs. All of these things are combinations of metrics that you've defined in the usages, plus the actual geometry that you have reflected in your project. So all of these numbers will also update live as you edit your project and as you go along. Besides doing a for rent feasibility pro forma, if you're more interested in community impact, you can do like a density study or a tax impact study. All kinds of calculations are possible in analytics. And then, well, actually, I'll stop there for a second. Does anyone have any questions about sort of drawing or reviewing calculations or anything like that?
I have another question, I guess.
Sure, please.
Maybe I was late to the lens one the other week. Is lens only applicable to data layers, or can you apply it to drawing layers?
It's only applicable to data layers.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Okay,
only,
so
yeah, go ahead.
drawing layers, you would just use properties, I guess.
Yeah, drawing layers. Were you looking to try to style or something the visibility of different?
Yeah, basically. Right.
Yeah, I would adjust either the usage, or if you want to one off, like make one building a different color, you can just add the color property to that building.
Okay.
And maybe this one I want to be pink instead of yellow. And I can just override it manually.
Okay.
Yep.
So sorry, I don't want to keep going down, but if I wanted to say grab a bunch of those buildings that are in context and change the look of them, could I do right click and create those geometries, set them onto live drawing layers, and then how would I style them?
If you want to style multiple geometries at once, I would recommend using a usage rather than doing it manually property by property. It'd be more efficient.
Right. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, before we end here, I want to show a couple of annotation options that you have in Giraffe, especially with our new annotation tools here. So the first one is just adding a label to an existing element. So if I just click add label to an existing and then click on any existing element here, maybe, there we go. Just had to actually click on it correctly. It's going to add a label, maybe. It's interesting. Let me try that again. I might have clicked too many times and confused it. Got a label. This also might be an internet problem. There we go. There's my label. There we go. So the nice thing about labels is that you can use them to pull properties from your geometry that you want to display. So if I click this X here, this is going to give me a list of all of the available properties on that element. And now I can display like the gross building area. I can display the usage. I can display the parking required. And all of that information is pulled live from this element. So it's really useful when you have like, you need to do reporting that's based on building by building rather than doing something that's project total. So I love using that functionality. You can also do some edits here, like viz wise, make the text red if you want to for some reason. There's a few different options there. There's also the option to create a just marker, and the marker isn't attached to anything specific in your project. It's just text. And I think my internet has decided to stop participating. So there we go. So here's my text marker. I can make it say anything I want. I can move it around. And these ones are really good if you want to add like a stick to the bottom. You can make them square or round, change the color, all kinds of controls here for these types of markers. So the point here really is if you need to make a nice looking presentation to share with others, whether you're going to export that as an image and put it into another report, or just build a report in Giraffe, you have lots of annotation options available to you. The last thing I also want to show that will help you build reports is views. And views is a way to save a current camera angle and the current layer states of your project. So I've got, this current camera angle, I can see my whole site. And I also have my satellite that's on at slightly transparent. So if I click to create a new view, it's going to pull up this view, give me an option to save it, and then I can just save that view. And now I can pretty easily pop back to this view again later if I need to. But what I also want to do is maybe turn off the satellite, and maybe I want to see the context of the nearby parcels. So I'll save this. I'm going to change the camera angle just to make it more obvious what's going here. Create another view. Name this one with parcels just for fun. Save that. And now I've got these different versions of my views saved for me in my project. And what's really nice is if I click on one of these views, it's going to pop over to that layer state and that camera angle. So you can create really beautiful presentations this way. There's a nice animation as it goes between each different view. And you can kind of tell your project story as you're walking through the project using views. All right. That was everything that I wanted to cover today in Giraffe 101. So I want to open it up for any questions whatsoever that you might have about Giraffe. We have about 6 minutes left here, so feel free.
Okay,
And yeah,
I'll ask
go
one.
ahead. Great.
Sorry.
No,
Um,
no, don't apologize.
the default view, um, that's in the left-hand column, usually. That button sets the default view, right? But can you click that button to return to the default view?
I'm not sure what you're referring to. This views
No,
button?
if you go to layers, then yeah, that orange guy.
This one.
Yeah, isn't that a default? Save layer opacity and visibility as default.
Correct.
So you
So,
go ahead.
oh, so what are you asking if you can create different views that will
No.
then be the
So if you click on that button, what happens?
it saves the current layers as the default layer visibility, which means when you close out of the project and come back to the project, those are the layers and the
Oh, I
opacity
see.
that they
So
will
that was
be.
my question, was how you recall the default is just it's when you close and open.
Yes.
Okay, got
Yep.
it.
Hi,
So
Holly.
it's not like a layer state, that you can, like in CAD, or used to be in CAD, kind of thing. Okay.
No, yeah, the purpose is actually more so um for like sharing. So when you make the project public, you can set your layer state so it stays that way. And also if you have multiple drawing layers with like multiple scenarios, saving which ones are visible is what drives the default urban calculations. So it's
Okay.
important to save which one you want to show here.
Right. Good. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
I just had a question because I think I broke it several times. My right click button doesn't work. It just crashes it immediately. But I think I found it says a point of contact is Alex Liss at CBRE. So I'm going to try to reach out to him, see if they can figure out why it doesn't like the data.
Okay. Is it on a specific layer that that's happening, or is it?
I can't tell which layer it's trying to read from. I was trying to do the boundary thing using the parcel, and I just right click and it just crashes and it says cannot read properties of undefined reading type. So there's something, maybe it's with one of the parcel layers, because I think it's imported from the county GIS or something.
Yeah, that's what I would suspect, that there's something weird with that layer, and then when your app tries to read it, it can't, and then it freaks out because
Yeah, so
computers
like
are.
your Los Angeles parcels that you have,
Yep.
that came from the county also, I'm assuming, or something.
Yep.
Yeah, so it just, yeah, it doesn't like Maricopa County, I guess. So we'll have to figure that out.
If you,
Unfortunate.
yeah, if you send me the layer that you're having trouble with, I can do some troubleshooting too.
Okay. How do I send you the layer?
You can either like take a screenshot of the layer name and the project,
Okay.
or if you know where the original source was from, you could send me the URL, but either way, we can figure it
Okay.
out.
All right.
I have a meeting with Alex at 3 today, so we can
Okay.
take a look at it together.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, everyone. Well, I want to encourage you to reach out if you ever have any questions. My email is just holly@giraffe.build. I'm happy to answer them. You can also use this red question mark in the bottom right-hand corner. The get in touch option is a live chat. And if you're on USA time, that live chat goes straight to me. So feel free to ask any questions at any time while you're working. I'm happy to help. Um, And with that, I think we're ready to close right on time. So thank you everyone for joining me, and you can look for this recording on YouTube coming up this afternoon. So feel free to rewatch at any time. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Ollie. That was great.
Thank you all. Bye.